Hello, my friends. Andy coming to you live from Orange County, California, in the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. We have a lot going on, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my guest up right away. She needs no introduction to my audience. Hey, Leandra Blades, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Oops, I got to take away my thing there. There we go. Yeah, I thought we'd get started right away because I know we have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm guessing we'll be on for about 3 or 4 hours. So we'll cut.
I won't wait. I can pick up something from practice in an hour.
Well, I want to jump right in with something really quick here, and I just want to go into what's happening with masks first, and I think that's the best way to start because we had a pretty big rally today. And what I'm reading is old hat for people like you and I who understand science, understand common sense, have been looking at all these issues from over a year ago, going on 2 years ago. And what the press is finally just catching on is that masks don't work. And so here, January 2nd, from the Washington Examiner, it says, this is an airborne illness. Dr. Scott Gottlieb says cloth masks don't provide a lot of protection against COVID-19. And then I have another one here that says CNN medical analyst admits cloth masks don't work against COVID. And then the reporter says, I reported that mask mandates would not work and why in the autumn of 2020. And down here, it just goes into further that the author says, I want to point out that there was plenty of evidence that cloth masks were not working in 2020. I used my experience as an environmental health and safety professional to describe all the reasons mask mandates would fail. Then we have, this is from the BBC, says COVID evidence on face masks is in schools is inconclusive. And that's just 3 of the many stories that I've been able to find. And so all that to say is that at best, and this is people reaching, that there may be a minor thing that masks can do. But that's again, I think people trying to look for a positive when there isn't one. But all the evidence that I've looked at all the way back to 2016 is masks don't work. And so we have everything from inconclusive to they flat out don't work. The one thing I just want to point out here is between 2008 and 2020, you see that blue line, and it may be hard to see if you're watching on a phone, but you see the blue lines there every year from 2008, 2009. That's deaths due to respiratory disease. So you see, we virtually had no change. All the way into 2020, there was no change. So we have nothing really, any reason why that we need to be worried about kids being masked, obviously, and we've known that for a very long time. But you see the red line. The red line is the increase or the number of deaths due to drug and alcohol-induced deaths. And this is in kids 13 to 18 years old, which is the kids in our school district. And you see it's 1,006 in 2020, all the way up. It doubled from 2019, which was 541. So I bring that up and I bring this to our audience's attention is to we're not goofballs, right? We're not conspiracy theorists. We're not morons. We've known that masks don't work. And for whatever reason, the federal government, the state, we have some Orange County supervisors and that type of thing. And then we have our district that we're fighting against something that obviously does not work, that is literally killing our children and harming our children. And they want to do nothing about it. So I start off with a rant because I am so angry that it's really hard for me not to use very colorful language right now. And I just want to, Leandra Blades, if you don't know, she's a member of our school board here at the Placentia Yorba Linda School District. And I just want to get some of the things that are happening behind the scenes, maybe, or are there things that, how do you feel about this? And what is it that we can do about it in the meeting that we're having tomorrow? Sorry, that was a very long rant.
No, it's fine. I've been hearing a lot of ranting lately, so. Well, you know how I feel about masks. I believe totally in parents' choice and your personal choice. So if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If it makes you feel protected, or if you think it's protected and that's what you believe in, then do it. But if you don't, then don't. I'm not quite understanding. I shouldn't say I don't understand. I understand about the school, as we look at the ESSER funding and what has been tied to ESSER funds from the government. It sounds like, from what I'm doing some research, because this is kind of just all starting to pop up, is that there's a strong possibility that the ESSER funds for 1 or 2 that was given out originally didn't have any strings attached. But then as you go to the ESSER funds 3, which was the most recent approved funds that we got, sounds like there were strings attached that basically was to keep you with these COVID protocols in the schools is how you get your funding. So I kind of always wondered how, when I was told, I said, are we making any money off of these vaccine clinics that you see sometimes that are posted around our schools? We're letting them use the school property for these clinics. No, we're not making any money. Well, maybe because of these ESSER funds, we have to have these vaccine clinics because that's tied to the funding. So in a way, we are getting funding from that, but they're just trying, we're just being told no. The masks, the social distancing, all the stuff that's going on in schools, it seems like it possibly could be tied to the ESSER 3 funds, which we're still trying to, we're still trying to find that out. So don't hold me to it. But from just reading from the CDC website and from reading from some of the information that we've seen, that wasn't really revealed when, you go in for this approval. So, so looking at that, and then
what I saw today was something up as it could be as much as $20 million given to each school district that maintains these rules and protocols.
Yes, and and then you start to question. Like a couple months ago, we approved. They said, "Oh, they're giving us $5 million," and we don't have to do anything for it, but apply for it. So then you start to ask questions like, well, maybe you had to apply for it, but what were there strings attached to that too? So, there's a lot of information that I feel like we don't get. And so we're just going to need to start doing a really deep dive. And I don't know. It's a really tough time when you hear things like this. Like when you go, okay, wait a second, we weren't given all this information, because I can tell you if it was tied to something like this where you're going to have to continue the masking, because obviously, I believe it was like 6 months ago, we've asked for parental choice in our schools for masks. So why would I knowingly approve funds that's going to keep our kids in the mask, or promise to keep the kids in masks to get some funding? Like that would make no sense for me to do that. Like tomorrow night, the vaccine mandate's on the table. Like, why would I want money that's going to, be tied to a vaccine? I mean, it just makes no sense. So there's a lot of processing. There's been a lot of processing for like myself for maybe like the last week or two, just the things that are happening. The things that, just all this stuff. I am disgusted. Like if you want me to start ranting, I could start ranting, but I'm trying really hard to be professional.
I can tell. Well, we have an issue going on.
She's right there. Pour a glass of wine, somebody.
Right. We have this issue in Travis Ranch, which is one of the schools in the district, where a student had been wearing a mesh mask for I think over a year. Has some correct me if I'm wrong. Has some medical issues. It was because he was getting lightheaded and nearly passing out when he was wearing the other mask, the cloth mask. But he'd been wearing a mesh mask for a very long period of time. And what I understand, there's employees in the school district, and it's some of the schools that they also wear mesh masks. And up until the other day, it wasn't a problem. But suddenly, out of the blue, they decided that it was a problem for this one child, and he was told to leave the school, if I'm understanding this correctly, and not allowed to return with a mesh mask. He had to, if he was going to come back, he'd have to wear a normal mask, which causes him to get headaches and get lightheaded and that kind of stuff. And but there's no, as far as I've looked, and I know other people have looked, there is no rule against a mesh mask. They're just saying that basically the rule is that you have to wear a mask. So what's going on with that? And then I want to get into what happened at the end of the last school board meeting. But is there anything going on with that case in particular? I know we had the school board meeting that was a big issue last week, but what about this particular child?
So I'm not going to, because I'm not going to comment on specifics, because I haven't been told not to. But from my from what I've been told, there's going to be attorneys involved and stuff. So I'm just going to keep it very generic. But what I'm going to say overall is that people in our school district have been wearing mesh masks and these sports masks with the holes in them for a year and a half. And so to me, it is ludicrous for all of a sudden to basically, to stop, or, I'm trying really hard to be politically correct around this one. not politically correct, but just not to give so much away. So for me, it just, for a year and a half, we have not meshed masks. I mean, I have sat up at the board meetings. I've gone onto school campuses. I have gone on airplanes, and I've had a mesh mask. If I have to wear a mask for a long time, like I remember one time I almost passed out in Costco. Like I can't do the mask. I don't understand how these teachers and these students and these people are doing these masks all day long. I do not understand it, and I feel terrible for them. I had to wear like a normal mask out of school a little while ago for like 30 minutes, and I was like, get out of there. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But as far as that goes, I believe, and I think too, you being a police officer and dealing in court cases, past practice is a huge, huge deal. Huge
Right.
deal. You can't just start implementing something because of possible like legal action, and it doesn't make the things that happen a year and a half go away.
Right.
So, and I also would say too that I believe that this has divided our district even more. And I think it's just really this whole mesh mask incident has, I mean, it's just taken on a life of its own. I think you have more parents rising up now. There's apparently there's attorneys involved. And the whole thing too is that I do know that, we are removing kids from school. It's no secret, because how many people have come out on social media saying they've done this, they've done this, they've done this.
Mm-hmm.
I have advocated to get these kids back into school. I have advocated for the mask choice, because the CDC and the CDPH, they are only giving guidance. It's a guide to choosing a mask, and there's a most effective to a least effective. There's nothing on the websites that say there are no mesh masks allowed.
Right.
And to say, like I know that there was an email from the superintendent. He did a personal email to Dr. Chow and asked about the mesh masks. And, Dr. Chow, said, oh, mesh masks aren't acceptable if light can go through and air. And I mean, like, what do you mean air? I mean, how are you supposed to breathe if air's not going through your mask? And so that's like, I kind of like thought about that, and I go, well, that's exactly what Dr. Chow would say. He's not a medical doctor, first of all.
Right.
So like, why are we asking him medical questions? But for me also, what I think that they're forgetting is, like, if I could read this real quick, as far as removing these kids because of the masks, just in November 19th of 2021, this came out, the attorneys for Let Them Breathe came out with the judge's findings. And it specifically says, second, I mean, I could read the whole thing, but it's kind of long. And then, so this is a paragraph that really stands out. Second, the order confirms the state's position that all individuals are required to wear a mask or face covering while indoors at a K-12 school in California. However, enforcement of the state's mask mandate is left up to each school. Nothing in the CDPH guidance requires schools to exclude students who refuse to wear a mask. As the state confirmed to the court, nothing in the challenged mask guidance purports to direct or authorize schools to force students into this independent study program. I mean, and then it just keeps going on, and it says, it's crazy. And so why are we, the question too is, a lot of teachers have come to me about this since all this started happening, and they've said, it is hard for us when you have a behavioral individual or somebody who's not making grades. Some teachers have said they've been threatened. The school has been threatened. Students have been threatened. There's weapons on campus, dope, drugs, alcohol. And because of this restorative justice, they don't want to remove the kids from school. So instead of suspension, they might go sit into a classroom, watch some videos for a couple days, and, go talk about, what's making them do this. But yet the mask suddenly is an offense that these kids leave this campus right away. And that does not make any sense to anybody, especially too when you have this guidance that says you do not have to do this. So in my opinion, this is a discriminatory act, once again, against the kids in the masks who are wearing the mesh masks on campus. I mean, they're not walking in there refusing to wear a mask. They're just wearing the mask that their parent has chosen for them, that they can breathe easy in. And so they're saying for some reason, I mean, the CDC has said that N95s are not safe for children. The CDPH has said surgical masks are not safe for children.
Right.
So if there's all this data that's coming out that's not safe, I find it hard to believe that the district, by telling people you can't wear this mesh mask or trying to say what mask you can use, how are they not taking on liability for themselves if something happens to these kids who have problems wearing, these masks that are super tight on their face? What happens if they pass out? Whose fault is that? You know?
That's really strange. I mean, it's Dr. Chow, right? I always forget his name.
Chow.
Dr. Chow, his doctorate, or he's a doctor of psychology, is he not? Or
Psychology.
Psychology.
Yes.
So I was talking to this with my wife Hedia about, you would think that a doctor of psychology would understand how much more damage this is causing psychologically,
Yes.
and probably reads up on the statistics, the one that I just showed you about 13 to 18-year-olds that are dying from alcohol and drug abuse and overdoses, that he would understand that much better. He's here promoting something that's a medical issue that clearly is not helping anything. It's not stopping anything. So why wouldn't I don't expect an answer from you, but it just doesn't make any sense. How does this guy, who is seemingly in charge of our health here in Orange County, and right now it appears to be our children's health, not wanting to protect the children? What is this about that the district itself, not you, because you and Sean are really the only two that are fighting as hard as the parents are, but what is it about these people that are in charge of our children that don't seem to care about our children? Do you have any clues as to, is it about the money? Is it quite possibly a money issue?
Yes.
All right. We'll leave it at that. So January 11th was the last school board meeting. That's when it was scheduled. This issue at Travis Ranch was about a week or two prior to the meeting. There was already uproar about it. There was already some protest and people marching in front of the school about this issue. So they clearly knew, they being you guys in the school board and the district superintendents, knew that this was going to be an issue. And they probably knew the parents were going to be there. They probably knew that maybe an attorney or two might be there. And so on January 11th, what I believe was a setup to actually not have the meeting at all is that they came in, the president, the new president, but Buck has been around for a good long period of time. She read some statement, some new rule that they created, her and Dr. Elsasser, what I'm guessing, and probably Freeman, and read a statement. And then they kind of pointed at a couple people in the audience, and she read the statement one more time, a little bit more lengthy. And then she just ended the meeting. There was no vote. There was no motion. There was nothing. She just decided that because somebody, which I think was probably a stooge in the audience, and giving them a reason to stop. That's my guess. I wasn't at the meeting because I had a little bit of a cold myself, so I didn't go. But I believe this was a complete setup just to not have the meeting, because they were probably unprepared and didn't want to hear from whoever was going to be speaking in regard to this child at Travis Ranch. Is there anything you could tell us about this issue in regard to whether it was against the rules, maybe even against the law, in regard to ending the board meeting in the way that they did?
Yeah, it did violate our bylaws, and I know that, like, me and Sean, we stayed after, and it was really funny because people said, "Oh, she was the only one who stayed after." Well, I stayed after because what happened was wrong, and it broke our bylaws. We did talk to the superintendent, me and Sean, and from what I remember, it was, well, the board bylaws may have been broken, but if not, there's a government code that backs it up. So we did talk about, well, we need to change the bylaws completely because this should never happen. So when you actually go in and read the bylaws, I don't know if I have them right here or not, but it basically says that, we had a full quorum. So her being able to just adjourn the meeting like that, what she needed to do was, if she was going to adjourn that suddenly, she had to have a date, a time, and a location set. And so obviously you're not supposed to, if you have a full quorum, you're not supposed to adjourn suddenly like that and just walk out. You obviously need to churn to the board, because you can't act like, what are the rules? What is it always preached? You have to act as a board,
Mm-hmm.
So this, obviously she should have churned and says, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. What is a good date, a time, and a location for the next meeting? and that needed to be discussed, and that needed to be set before the adjournment. And so I think that those rules are in place because, I mean, who's to say that tomorrow night she can't sit there, somebody puts a mask, now she's beating her gavel again. I mean, so that really makes no sense. And I will say that I have spoken to many parliamentarians, many elected officials, people who've seen the video, and they said it absolutely breaks the board bylaws. And for someone to say that it doesn't, it's like ludicrous because these bylaws are there. You know, like when they're saying, you know, in some cases you can convene with less than a quorum. Well, you're probably convening from less than a quorum because there's not enough people for a quorum to have the board meeting take a vote. I mean, like these are the things that people are saying. How can someone say that this isn't breaking the board bylaws? And so I've talked to a lot of people. They've seen the video and they said this is not. You don't have the power to unilaterally, end a meeting like that. Especially when all of the meetings before we have allowed mesh masks. We can't take a stand on mesh masks just arbitrarily because this has become a hot topic. Past practice, like I said before, is a huge thing. Huge. And so you're telling me that when I was sitting up on the dais in a mesh mask and nobody even gave me the heads up, hey, we're going to announce a new rule. So what were they going to do? Make me get up and go get a new mask? I mean, give me a break. That's ridiculous. And I think they told me the day before, oh, well, mesh masks aren't allowed. I said, well, show me where the policy is. Show it to me. And you can't. You show me a CDC guide for choosing a mask. Well, this is the mask that I chose for me. And then the CDC director just came out and said, the best mask, for yourself is one that you can wear comfortably all day long. Okay, so obviously that type of mask. So, I mean, there's so much going on and so many opinions. And another thing, too, is I asked questions and I said who, and I know that this was also announced to staff in the district. And I said, who did that whole mesh rule? And he told me, Carrie Buck asked me to write that rule. And then my issue with this is that how do you go and read something when you have one board member who only knows about it? You haven't talked with this whole board, because had you talked to all of us, we all would have had opinions on it. And we would all probably have said, why don't we wait and actually research and find an absolute policy? Because Dr. Chow hasn't put it into policy at OC Health. He has not. It's not on his website. Anything for OC Health sends you straight into the CDPH, which is what our website has constantly been doing. So now they've arbitrarily made a new rule about no mesh masks or these holes in the sports masks. And so now, we're even it's even worse because how many people are emailing me, calling me, and saying, hey, my kid's still in a mesh mask. Teachers, I'm still wearing a mesh mask. Staff, I'm still wearing a mesh mask. So you have all these people wearing these mesh masks and reporting it. Hey, I'm wearing a mesh mask. And then, but we're still there's kids like that are kind of being picked off at different schools for a mesh mask. So what's going on here would be my thing. And how are we allowing this to happen? Especially after a year and a half of nothing being said, mesh mask being worn. Your own board member was wearing a mesh mask.
Yep. Well, it's starting to appear that they're attacking. I'm looking for a different word, but it seems to be children of parents who speak out against the school board or have spoken at the school board and not you, of course, but against some of these mandates and against some of these types of things. And some of these kids are straight A students that are now not allowed to go to school, that now they're missing classes. And there's just so much that seems to be retaliatory. That's the word I was looking for other things, because it is not it's not being enforced equally in the sense that a good solid rule that's written down prior to saying it's a violation. They call it a violation and then they create the rule later. That's not done in any form or fashion in anything. We know as law enforcement officers that it's not against the law unless it's written down. Exactly. voted on by Congress or voted on by state representatives. And that has to go through a long period of time. You don't enforce a law that doesn't exist and then create a law behind it, which has happened here. I wrote an email the other day that was a lot less volatile than when I first wrote it. And I, thanks to my wife, she's
That's what I
always
was
the one
gonna
who,
say. I think somebody else was behind that one then.
yeah, she calms me down because I'm going to tell you what some of the words I use because I think Carrie Bucko is a spineless coward, and got scared and didn't know how to handle a meeting that would handle such a serious situation like this sudden retaliatory act on this child for wearing a mesh mask. She wasn't prepared for maybe some of the speakers that might have been coming forward and some of the controversy. And I think that along with her was Dr. Elsasser, another spineless person in my mind, who was sitting there egging her on to do it or helped her, in the process of doing this. Because there's so many other ways of handling a meeting where perhaps somebody in the audience isn't following the rules, maybe
Right.
speaking too loudly, maybe commenting, when it's not their turn to comment. There's like at least the last couple times that we've been to school board meeting, there's like 8 police officers, 4 firemen, and security guards. You're
Yes.
going to tell me that Carrie Buck couldn't have gone and said, "Hey, we're going to pause this meeting for a second." She gets in contact with the lieutenant that's there, because usually there's a lieutenant or a watch commander that's there, and said, "We're going to carry on with this meeting, but can you help me with this person who's not following the rules?"
Right.
And then stay out of it.
Right.
Continue with the meeting, allow the law enforcement that's there to do the things that they're there for,
Right.
instead of just arbitrarily ending this meeting
Right.
and throwing a temper tantrum, which is
Right.
just unbecoming of our school district. And that was all in my original email, and I took much of it out thanks to my wife. But these are the things I talked about in the email, was that if she can't run a meeting, how can she be president, so-called president, in
Right.
charge of running these meetings? Because this is not going to stop.
Right.
It's only going to get more difficult for her with all the things that we have coming up. CRT, vaccine mandates, continuing with this mask mandate, online programs where the teachers are putting kids on behind a computer inside their classroom instead of teaching them what it is that they need to learn. To the types of people that have speaking at their assembly, like the Black Lives Matter proponent that they were going to pay $60,000 to speak for an hour at one of the meetings. These things are not getting better. They're going to get worse, and they're going to continue with this madness. What is it we can do, if anything, to forward to push, for a replacement that she's just not equipped or prepared to handle this kind of thing? Is there anything in your mind that we can do?
Well, I mean, there's an election coming up in 2022. And, it was, when you talked about, there was 3 security guards in the meeting and there's 3 police officers all standing there. And in the past, we've had staff walking around with a mask, handing out masks to people. I saw one person who wasn't masked, and I saw a few that had like a mask below their nose. But I just feel like that was, you have to pick your battles here, and I feel like I feel like these battles that are being picked, like it's on the wrong side. And I'll say it at the board meeting tomorrow night too. And these opinions are of my own, of course.
Yes.
But I just feel like what are we doing? You can't take a hard, you can't, when things are getting tough, you can't make new rules, and you can't take a hard line, and just start doing this, because when you have past practice in play, I mean, that's just such a huge, and I think sometimes people don't understand, when you haven't been around the law, that there's so many things that come into play, and this stuff, it just never works out. It never works out when you do arbitrary stuff like this. It just doesn't work. It doesn't. And also too, I personally, when she did the gavel, there wasn't a lot. Usually, like at our closed session meetings, there's sides. We all know what's in those rooms. There's people who are, proponents of CRT, and there's opponents of it. There's people who want vaccine mandates. There's people who don't. What I thought was just kind of strange was that there was only 2 people there who would be a Buck supporter, but yet the whole room was filled with, the people who are showing up, against CRT and against the mandates and stuff. And so then I also found it very suspect the next morning when she announced on Twitter her campaign re-election, and all the people who have been causing me, like writing me hate mail, who've had information that I was always wondering, well, where did they get this from, are supporting her. So then everything kind of tied together. And so I think when, announcing on Twitter, all you have to do is go through and look and show that all of the people who have been hating me, asking for me to be recalled, I'm a white supremacist, I'm an insurrectionist, I'm a white nationalist, all of this stuff is coming from this group of people who absolutely support her.
Mhm.
So I think, you have to start taking a look. I think in the past, people have been able to hide. They've been able to hide. Like for me, I never hid it. I said exactly who I was. I said exactly what I wanted to do. And I said I wouldn't waver, I wouldn't change. I'm going to work for the kids and I want more education, so on and so forth. Now I don't see how you hide from a base who wants CRT, who wants ethnic studies, who wants all of this stuff that she's been pushing for her last 10 or 12 years on the board. I don't see how you hide from that anymore. So she might have to run on an actual party. Can't say you're nonpartisan, but you have just, one side that only supports you.
Right. Just really quick, we're broadcasting on 4 different Facebook channels on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Rumble. So if you're on any of those platforms, maybe not Rumble, if you have a question for Leandra or something you want to bring up before we sign off here, just write it in the comments. Again, I'm not sure that Rumble will show up. I think that's the only one that will not. But just go ahead and type it in the comments. We've got somebody that appreciates. Diane is a friend of mine from some time ago, but she says she's so grateful for our consistent pursuit of truth regarding our students and need as parents to be aware and persistent in our own pursuit of the values we seek to teach our children. Keep it up. And I think though she may be directing that because she's a friend of mine, you exemplify that on our school board, and we appreciate that you're constant just taking it for us and being out there. And it's just it's so important. Sean too. I think I gave him a really hard time after his very first school board meeting. I wasn't very patient, but he's been standing up for our students and the parents that got him elected. I did not speak very highly of Marilyn the other day, and still am concerned about her position on the things that we really. I want to say that we got her elected because we thought that she would have these very similar values, and she hasn't been consistent on those for us. So
I do want to bring up one thing too when we're
Sure.
talking about these vaccine and these masks. The ESSER funding is not, the ESSER funding. As more and more comes out, I do think we're going to find some ties to, between the money and all these mandates. But also too, when I went up to Sacramento on the 3rd, and we met with the senators and the assemblymen, and we met up there with Rockland with some school board members, and we basically have demanded that Newsom end this emergency order so we can retain local control. So there was some teachers who were CTA members up there, and they went into the meetings with us, and they said, hey, we just want you guys to know that the CTA is pushing that, the school boards, threats from the teachers and from the union members that if these kids are found with no masks, to sue the superintendent, sue the school district, sue the school board. If, they're not doing this. So basically, if you're not doing what the union wants, they're telling their teachers to basically rat them out and then, try to scare the school boards into being sued. And so the CTA and this union is absolutely behind this 100%. So I just feel like it's all coming tied together, and people will say like, oh, she just hates the union. No, I don't hate the union. I've been in 2 unions in my life,
Right.
My husband belongs to a union. I don't hate unions. I hate unions that don't just work for the employees' benefits, and trying to get better pay, things like that. I hate unions that come in and do this to kids. I mean, I have a thing right now that the CTA is trying to push. They're doing forums on like CRT and implicit bias for their teachers. Like, why aren't we doing workshops on, like, remember how you like attend stuff? It's like, oh, here's your 401k and how to make it better. And here's this, like, those true unions who are working for their employees to actually like better their work environment and their pay and their benefits. Those are the type of stuff that those unions, that they put on. They don't put on, for, this type of stuff for teachers if you don't have an agenda.
Right.
Yeah. So I just, so she kind of solidified to everybody up there. She, she told an assemblyman, she told people, this is what they're doing behind the scenes. This is what they're pushing. And they're putting a lot of pressure. And, the union's been very powerful in the past. And so they're putting a lot of pressure on the school districts, and the superintendents and the school boards, to do this. And I sit here still and I look and I still wonder why people are so fearful of these teachers unions. And I think that it's just because they've been powerful for so long that they don't know how to unentangle from them. Like, this is all they know. This is all we've ever known. But I think that there is another path to, to go another route. We just have to find the people who are, who are fearless and who will say, you know what, this is not good for students. This is not even good for our teachers. We need to go a different path.
Yeah, it's obvious not good. I mean, just in the one meeting where they presented this information that only 4.12% of grades K through 8 are above level. 4%, right? On level, 40%. Below level by one step is 32, and 2 or more levels below is 23% of the students. Only 4.1 is above the level. What are they doing? I mean, it's just they were spending so much, and I've said this before, that we spend so much time on these other issues that are nonsense, that have nothing to do with education. It doesn't teach our kids to read, doesn't teach them how to count, doesn't teach them how to write. And we're spending so much more money and so much more time on something that's just nonsense. In the meantime, we're also telling them that they have to wear masks.
Yes.
And
yes, they have to wear masks, and the thing too is that in other countries, like in China and Russia, what are they saying? Are they spending time on these extra issues, or are they learning, the trades, and are they learning math, and are they learning science, and are they learning how to write? I mean, and that's just a thing. Like, I don't understand. I do understand. I'm not going to say I don't understand anymore. I always say I don't understand, but I really do understand. But it's just, it's a hard thing. And I think too, after being on the board for a year, I realized how we've gotten to where we are. Mm-hmm. And I also realized too that, for instance, when we go back to do hiring, in closed session, when they bring people forward, the only information we're getting is their name, where they went to college, where they've worked, if they're married, single, if they have a cat or a dog, and what they like to do. So you're sitting there and you're supposed to take a vote back there with that type of information. And I thought that was absolutely absurd. And I know that
there's no oral board that they would sit in front of, like, have you?
No. And so that was the thing. I brought that up early on, like maybe I would say a few months into it. And I know that Sean and Maryland, because I think it had been brought up with Maryland. And then I think it had been brought up one time. And so I said, we need to sit in, like, at least principals and above, we need to sit in, because we need to know what their view is, what their direction is, how they want to go. Right. And I was told no, just flat out no, don't put it to a board vote. And I said, well, how do we know who we're hiring? And they said, well, this is what you trust us for. This is what, you're our boss, or, the superintendent said, this is what I'm here to do. And it just comes to a point where you go, well, wait a second here. Like, we're kept so far out of the game, and we're just supposed to take somebody's word for it. And there was finally one where I said, well, I'm not going to repeat what I said, but I did talk to other school boards, and, I asked, so how they sit in on their interviews, their vendors come in, like, we get all these vendors, and you have this, like, rainbows and butterflies little paragraph or two about how lovely this program is. And then you go Google it and you find it's just CRT. It's just nonsense. And you go, what the heck? And so you start to question, you have to do so much work just to find out what these programs actually are. So then I asked another school district, because you're up there with a bunch of different school districts. So you just, sitting around, you're asking questions. And they say, oh no, we'll get on a Zoom with the vendor so we can go ask questions. They'll do a presentation to us so you can ask questions. And I'm sitting here going, why is so much information being withheld from us? And we're just supposed to make these decisions. And then I realized this is how it always was before. And so this is why there's no change happening, because they don't want the change to happen. And so we have to start doing something different because like
This ain't working.
this is how we yeah. And there's a lot of resistance to this, but it makes sense. Like as people have said, how are you supposed to make an informed decision about people who are going to be leading our kids, presiding over our kids in school? You have directors, you have assistant superintendents. If you don't even know what their goals are, what type of what they believe in, what direction they want to lead the district or their school, like how are you supposed to make those informed decisions when you just basically have like a bio from like, I don't know, it's probably like the same bio the bachelor goes off of, I mean, who knows? So
Well, I mean, you are a representative of your community, right?
right,
The community elected you.
right,
We're hoping that you will take our values and go into a situation like that and hire the people that meet our values.
right,
That's ideal, and that they surely don't want that. Right?
right, right, right.
That's exactly what they don't want. Just in speaking of this this issue, is that today we had a rally there at the school district
Mm-hmm.
there in Orangethorpe, and it was mostly about the mask issue, but also we were talking about the vaccines too. And a very good number of people showed up, and I do really like to see that it's a good mixture of men and women. So it's just not mama bears,
Right.
papa bears are there too. And we had a really good showing, and it was 9:30 in the morning or something like that, which is when many people are at work. So I was really impressed with the amount of people that either
Right.
took time off of work and came down there. But with that being said, the days that we have the school board meetings on Tuesdays once a month, how important is it to have the parents showing up? I know what it was happening before. Nobody was showing up, and that's how we got into this mess.
Right.
And so many parents weren't paying attention, and we were being silent. But at this point, is the number, is the outpouring of concern by parents important to a school board meeting when the parents show up?
Well, of course it is. And I think this is, I kind of sit there and I listen, I observe, and, you know, I think it's important for everybody to be there because this is your school. This is your school district. And I think what people have forgotten when they say, well, this is our business meeting. Well, the only reason that the business is there is because of the taxpayers.
Mm.
And I feel like that's been a huge thing that people forget is that this district is run by taxpayers. They might say it's government funded, but there is no government funded, it's taxpayer funded. So essentially our taxpayers are paying this. I mean, it's kind of funny. I hate saying that because remember, like when you pull people, I pay your salary.
Right.
So it is so I kind of like hate having to say that, but it's true. It's so true. And too, and that's why I've been a proponent as well, even in the school board race, and I've been very open with it. I am for school choice because I believe in things like this are happening in this school, and they're pushing CRT and they're pushing, things like the mask, and they're pushing different things. You should be able to go and use your taxpayer money and have a choice to go somewhere else, whether it's a charter school. I mean, I've signed the school choice stuff, the petitions to get it on the ballot because I think it is important that the money follows your kid. Because
Yep.
I'm sitting here and I'm on a school board and people say, well, how could you be for school choice? It's like, no, I'm not. I am not a paid person for the district. I represent you guys and I see what's happening and I see what goes on. And so, you know what? If you can take your education elsewhere and the money can follow your kid, perfect. Because then if the district starts to lose things, because if you're yelling and screaming like we are at the top of our lungs about things and we're just not being heard and they're just going on as planned, okay, then let them go somewhere else. And then if they start to lose a bunch of students, I mean, it's like capitalism 101.
Yep.
You're going to give the people what they want and they will come. Like there should be no reason that there's any fear ever of a charter school coming in or anything else, coming into the area. You shouldn't have any fear. If you're giving the community the education and what they want, then you should have no fear whatsoever about anything. It's if you're
Yep.
freaking worried that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing and the community doesn't like what you're doing, that's when
Yeah. If
yeah,
there's no competition and no consequence to bad
yes,
behavior and bad decision making, then
yes,
they just go on and continue making bad decisions.
exactly,
So there has to
exactly.
be a consequence.
Yeah.
And
And I mean too, and I don't want these teachers, like, people say, oh well, that could cause teachers to lose their job. And it's the same thing. give the community what they want, and they're not going to go, and teachers won't lose their job.
Right.
I
How hard is that?
I don't know. I think too. I think we've lost sight of that. Many things like police department, fire department, all these places, they're run like businesses. And I think in education, like as I've kind of watched, it kind of seems like, it's not truly run like a business model. And I feel like if we maybe kind of return to things like that, like leave the politics out of it and actually look at what's working and, not all this fluff that keeps getting in everywhere, I think things could change.
Yep. You can tell when an organization or someone is ashamed of what they're doing is because they don't want people to see. And that's how I felt about the January 11th meeting, that they just didn't like, well, we don't want coming people asking questions anymore. They're going to ask us about these mesh masks and we're not ready and we don't have a rule. And I remember in the dog training business, there were trainers that wouldn't allow the customer to see how their dog was being trained. Like, well, what are you trying to hide? What are you kicking the dog? You may get some type of result. But what are you afraid of by not having people watch? I also think about Anaheim Police Department when we started to have the Citizens Academy, where the citizens were now allowed to come into our police department and see how each one of the divisions were run and how the SWAT team did certain things and how the K-9 unit did certain things. It really put a lot of pressure on all of us to do better. Right. And to be more transparent with what it is we do. And sometimes they have to see that police work is ugly. It's just as a fact, it's ugly. And if you keep trying to tell them that it's not ugly and you just can't see what we do, then you start to get a little bit crazy. It gets out of hand. Right. And so again, back to the competition and the consequence to bad behavior in the school district, they've been able to get away with a lot because nobody was watching. Nobody was paying attention. Yeah. So I get so encouraged when I see people there. I just wanted to get your feedback on how it affected the school board.
No, and too, and that is like I kind of went off on the other stuff, but it's encouraging to see people, to hear people, because I mean this is your school district. This is your school district. These are your children, and people. I feel like, and I'm not naming names, and I'm not saying that this is like that this is all going on at the district. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in general, from what I'm seeing all across the country and from what I'm seeing in Orange County, is that I think people have lost sight that these are people's children, and they need to come speak up for them. And so I'm super proud when people come and they speak up and they fight for their kids, because you know what, the stuff that's going on with these kids, it's not right. It is not right at all. You can have a Super Bowl here, but we're still under an emergency order. You can have all this stuff going on, but we're under emergency order. I mean, like we just need the madness to stop. And I know teachers tell me all the time, they're working harder. They're contact tracing, they're doing, and the whole contact tracing and the testing and the quarantine and stuff. People up north are not doing that. That was the CDPH only recommended it. Dr. Chow made it a local health order. So Dr. Chow has made life so much harder for our teachers, for the admin staff, for everybody by doing this, because the teachers can't just go in and teach. You have to go make sure you've logged everybody who's in these seats. So in case somebody pops up positive, you have to do all the contact tracing. I mean, I've literally seen administrators there till 3 or 4 hours afterwards because they're doing the contact tracing for the day. I mean, teachers are exhausted, administration's exhausted, the kids are exhausted. Everybody is exhausted. But yet I just feel like we're just like, instead of just showing some grace and just going, my gosh, like everybody just do the best that you can. Wear the mask, that's the most, wear the mask that you want your child to be in. They're masked up. It says face covering and it says a cloth mask, put it on and like, let's go teach these kids. And I don't know. Am I just like too simplistic about these things? Or, like, no. I just, like sometimes I like sit here and you start to like ask yourself, am I just like thinking that this is just such a simple concept? But I mean, and I do understand the fear. I understand. And I blame a lot of the fear on the media. It's like, if you listen to the media and you listen to Dr. Fauci all day, you're going to sit there in your living room in the morning as you're making your coffee, listening to the news and think, my kid's going to die today if he goes to school and doesn't wear his mask. I mean, it's just sad. It's sad.
For months, we've asked this district to be a leader, right? To step out of the norm that you see happening in many other districts in California. There are some that are stepping out. I know that I've seen a few of them, and they're not coming to the top of my head here, but they have pushed back against the mask mandates, and they have pushed back against CRT, and we're definitely not the first. But the thing that is bizarre is that they can see the number of people that show up, the number of parents that, if they decided to step out and be a leader in these issues that we're bringing up, they have the support of the parents.
Right.
So it just doesn't make any sense. That, I mean, what again? It always comes down to the money part of it.
Right.
That when I was told today about the $20 million, or I see somebody put $45 million here, whatever it is.
Right.
If that's it, if they have sold our children's health, sold our children who are on the verge of committing suicide, that are drinking too much and taking too many drugs, according to the stats that I read,
Right.
if they rather have that, that if they'd rather have the money with those consequences, it's evil, it's devilish. They are spineless cowards, and I just, it doesn't make any sense for me. So,
right, and too, what I was also going to mention is I watched, you watch how there's a lot of people in our community. We had this like outpouring of like Orange Unified comes and supports the parents for Placentia. Placentia goes and, Placentia or Belinda parents go to Orange Unified. They go to Tustin. Everybody kind of goes and watches each other and participates in support. And what I found very telling the other night as well, and somebody called me from the meeting. They were in Orange Unified's meeting, and there was a cop in there, mask underneath his nose. There was somebody sitting there maskless. There was somebody with a mesh mask. There's this whole slew of people, mesh, mask, unmasked, whatever. And Orange Unified was still able to carry out their business meeting. Mm. And so I thought that was very telling, that nobody deviated, nobody changed the rules. Right. All these school districts around us, all these school boards were able to hold their meetings, but somehow we couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And I just,
her very first official meeting as president, and she failed. Yeah. She couldn't. Yeah. It's just so crazy. Karen writes, and why are activists from outside our district with no kids here having more influence on what happens to our kids than us parents do? There's no way.
I will say that we have some activists in our school district. They show up. They do not have any kids. They're activists for the Democratic Party, and we have a couple parents who have some. They have some contacts, and they start making phone calls. I mean, we had the flyer go out that said, come to the school board meeting if you're on this side, and you'll get volunteer hours for this. And so, there's just opposition on both sides. But I do think it's sad, because when you have people who are in line, and I've heard it from people, they say, go fill up all the seats so the parents can't sit down. You have college students from Chapman, Cal State Fullerton, all these places. I do think that that's sad, because one day those kids, I mean, who knows, maybe in 10 years, that kid's going to be, a parent. And if they really think something's important that they need to be in, they're going to feel really bad if some college student sitting in that seat that, that's important to them to hear or to advocate for their kid. Especially too, if people were telling me in line that they didn't even know, they go, what school district is this again? Where are we? I mean, so it's just, you don't
even know where they're at.
It's political games. And I think it hurts most for the parents, because these are their children, and people don't understand that. These are not political pawns. Children are not political pawns.
Looks like I got a comment from Carrie Buck here. It says, there's too much common sense in this discussion. I must stop, Carrie Buck. I think it's Ben.
Oh.
All right.
I'm going to say it too. I've never, I would say, I think that there's a professional, I'm speaking the way I'm speaking because it is true what happened, and, coming out the next day with your thing, and then you start to connect all these dots, oh my gosh, this is how these people have had so much information on me. And so I think that that's pertinent, because I don't know. You kind of just start to feel a little bit like, like the true colors have shown. And I've always gotten along with her, outside of politics. Like, I don't think we'll ever agree. We won't probably ever agree politically. But, I get along with her. I don't know after if she hears me saying this tonight if that'll be
Yeah.
the case. But I believe, like, the other day that was the first actual real political statement and playing to her base that she did. When people say that I play to my base, I'm not playing to my base. When I said we wanted to get rid of CRT, that's not playing to my base. I'm doing a campaign promise. It's what I promised I would do as being elected. The things that I'm doing up there are exactly what I promised I would do. I'm never playing to my base. I'm doing what I promise. I like to say promise is made, promise is kept.
For somebody that's been around as long as she has, I think, what is it, 15 years? I forget how long.
Well,
At 12 years, it was just very amateurish.
yeah.
I mean, she just she couldn't even do it gracefully. You would have thought that she would have came up with something a little bit better. I'm going to get a couple comments, and then I have one more question before we sign off here. But Karen says, Tustin School Board meeting tonight didn't announce no mesh masks. And,
well, because it's not a CDPH. It's not a CDPH. It's nowhere. And I have heard from doctors that the reason the CDPH and the CDC will not mandate a certain type of mask is because it gives them responsibility. And so they don't want to do that. So that's why they say the best, this is the, whatever word I use, my brain's kind of right now. It's the best, like, to the worst. But even when you get down to the worst, they don't say, don't ever wear it. Don't wear it. Do not wear this into a school. Do not wear this here. They give you the best and they give you the worst. I mean, if you kind of think about it, how equitable, since equity is the big, word in schools, if you can afford this, like, fancy wazoo mask, what if you can't afford this fancy wazoo mask? And, these kids are losing their masks all the time. How do you, sure, the schools are handing out these masks, but they're not saying how safe the masks are. It doesn't say, it says right there on the box, this doesn't protect against COVID. So I just think this whole thing is, like, it's just ludicrous. Like, I scratch my head every day just going, what the heck is going on? And why are we buying into the madness? That's just, look at how divided we are right now. Teachers are divided, students are divided, families are divided. Like, if anything, we should not be making arbitrary rules that continue to divide.
Yep, give choice. I was just thinking that I think it was a couple of weeks ago, Biden had announced that he was going to send every home a mask. And then I was thinking, because I have a lot of kids, right? We have 5 kids that go to two in elementary, 1 in junior high, and 2 in high school. And I'm thinking, well, what's one going to do? Because this is the word from the medical and the scientists, is that you wear an N95. When you take it off, you have to throw it away. You get a new one.
Right.
And by the time I did the math, let's just say we use 5 masks a day. That's something like 1,200 and something masks a month.
Yeah.
So he's going to send me. It just gets so ridiculous that they just continue to push something that is just illogical and nonsensical. That just it's so crazy that we're divided over something that's so stupid. It's one of the dumbest things.
Piece of cloth. Over a piece of cloth. And that's the thing too. And the CDC comes out and says, these cloth masks probably don't work. And my fear is that they're going to start to say people need to wear the N95s or the surgical. But then how does the CDC and the CDPH walk back that that's not safe for children?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think parents have done a wonderful job most of their kids' life making the best choices for them. And so I just feel like we should be, how many times did a kid next to you have snot running down his face? He was still in school, and somehow we're all still here.
Yep.
So,
well, the stat is that there's not one healthy child who's died of COVID-19.
Right.
Since this thing has started, not one.
Right.
I know people go, wait, what about the 300 and something? Those were children that had cancer and at least 4 more comorbidities that were, obese. But most of our children, again, if I had an obese child, if I had a child that had diabetes, I would probably tell them to wear a mask. I don't know. I want them to be as protected as possible, but it would be an N95 mask. It wouldn't be these diapers on their face that stop nothing. Right. Again, that's my job as a parent. It's not the schools. to
Right.
mask all the other kids that are not going to be even affected by this thing.
Right.
And then not to mention the antibodies that I have. I have the antibodies, and I
Right.
slept with a COVID
Bye.
patient for 7 days. I slept with
Right.
her for 7 days. I didn't get sick with COVID.
Right.
Anyway, I'm going to get a whole another rant, and I need to stop.
Okay.
I just want to, before I let you go, I just want to ask about the CRT wording that we've been working on for the last 3 months, however long it's been, and
Yeah.
not getting to the bottom of it. Is there any chance that we are going to be able to ban this ridiculous curriculum,
Yeah.
otherwise known as CRT?
I would say, I mean, if you look in our school board meetings, in our study sessions, it appears every time we have a 3-2 vote. And so I would say yes. It's just basically one more paragraph that that paragraph we're working on, and I think we have it inserted, and they're just kind of doing the final touches, making sure everything's legal. In fact, tomorrow was supposed to be a CRT study session to finish it up, so it could be on the February agenda. So now I bet you it'll be pushed to March. But you know what? That's okay if it gets pushed to March. That's totally fine. Because I mean, like, it is what it is. And I feel like a lot of people almost are saying that what she did, by breaking the bylaws and unilaterally adjourning a meeting, a lot of people are coming with there's more people coming probably than the last time. There's a ton of information flowing. People feel like they're more prepared. I mean, I just don't see how stopping the meeting last week, like, in my mind, I was like sitting there going, this is going to get real. Like, this is going to get real.
You just made it worse.
Next meeting just made it worse. Yeah. Like, I was sitting there, and then too, and then I was also getting some people saying, oh, well, she sat there. So, she didn't leave. Well, I didn't leave because I didn't believe that this was the right thing to do. I thought we were breaking rules by just walking out of a meeting, no date, no time, no nothing. But not only that too, what about the 7 o'clock open session meeting? Like, what happened to that? Yeah, and I'm also the clerk of the board, and nobody gave me anything to sign. They said we're adjourned. So I mean, like, there's rules here. Because I didn't follow the whole crowd out the door. I mean, Sean stayed, and me and Sean stayed outside till about 7ish because we thought there should be another meeting. Like, we go, what about the 7 o'clock meeting? Once nobody was coming back and the door stayed locked, we figured we'd probably get to go.
Well, the one thing for sure is that Carrie Buck is who we thought she was. There's no doubt about that. We all of us parents, have called her out at one point or another during a meeting, and she's exactly who we thought she was. Anything else before? I just got to point out one more thing. I saw Freeman. What's Freeman's first name? I always forget her first name. Karen. Karen. Was pointing it, like, directing towards you when you were taking a drink of your water, which is, I mean, another, like, just stupid thing that she was doing, and like going, with her arms, like, look at, and then right as the meeting was ending, Buck pulls down her mask and starts drinking from her water.
Yeah.
What the?
When I saw that, I'm going to say, because I usually don't drink, I wouldn't drink that much water at the beginning of a meeting because these usually meetings, go on. So I usually try to pace myself. But since I saw the motioning, there was this absurd motioning coming my way, I made sure, I did do like a 7-miler that morning. So I was thirsty. I really was. Yeah. But, usually I pace myself a little bit better. But I'm going to sit here and say, I did. I took a long extra swig of that water before I had to pull that mask back on, because it's not fun. Before I had to put my mesh mask back on that nobody gave me the heads up about, that they were going to announce that there is a mesh mask rule in our district that I, as a board member, knew nothing about, was not asked about, nothing.
So, right. Just a couple of these comments too before we leave. We got Karen says they made the no mesh rule up to protect that principal after he removed the poor kid from his class for wearing one. None of the cloth masks work, so why rule out wearing one particular kind? It's not okay to keep kicking the CRT ban to yet another month. Come on. We want it now. I agree with Karen. Based on the crap they continue to put on the agenda for approval, we need it. Dora says, looks like Freeman knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, there wasn't really anything out on that desk. It was easy to just jump up and leave. I was a little suspect, but I mean, I'm going to try to give I'll try to give her the benefit of the doubt. But
I didn't.
I had my stuff and I couldn't pack up that fast.
Yeah. I
That
called
was
her.
like,
I think the three of them.
earthquake drill almost. Like you were ready, like stop, drop, and roll.
Yeah, the three of them colluded to do something very stupid with that meeting, and that was ended inappropriately, which is just it's gonna make their life more difficult. He was sweating. I don't know what that was.
Chow, he should be.
Good. And was fidgeting with him mask a lot.
Huh.
Not sure. All right. Flash Freeman.
Well, I have a kid. I have a kid asking to be picked up from practice. So.
Okay. All right. We're gonna let you go.
I'm gonna head on.
All right. All right, my friends.
At the meeting, please. People say, "Oh, it's all Leandra's people that she asked them to come and speak." No, but you know what? If you have something to say, come to the school board meeting. It's your right as an American citizen. It's your right as a community member. It's your right as a parent to let your voice be heard, no matter what side you're on. No matter.
That's very strange. None of us need your permission, and I'm not saying this to be mean or anything. We don't need your permission to come to there on our own volition. Leandra's called me. I've never called her before a meeting that I could remember. Something happens in the news, I'll ask you about it, but that's about it. I have my other sources, and I don't want to cause you any problems, so I purposely don't do those things. And I have teachers emailing me all the time. So it's All right, friends. We love you guys. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Leandra, for giving me so much of your time.
Of course. Okay. Alrighty. I'll talk to you guys soon. All right. Bye.